Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about tonight's slate, and we got 9 games on tap, so decent sized slate for a Saturday night. Obviously, get your day games already going on, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the guys that I'm looking at for tonight. Starting off at starting pitcher, Danny Salazar, $11,400. He's a sizable favorite, minus 160 and an 8-run total. This is a guy, as we know, monster upside as far as strikeouts go, 28.1% on the season. Is allowing 1.19 home runs per 9, which you don't like, but what you do like is the fact that this has been a terrible lineup right now for the Detroit Tigers. Josh Tomlin has pitched a complete game against them last night. Coincidentally, Danny Salazar is actually $600 cheaper than Josh Tomlin was last night, but he's a guy's at a good spot. There are a lot of power hitters in this lineup, so you worry a little bit about the long ball, but all in all, he's a sizable favorite and should get plenty of run support from his Cleveland offense that's facing off against Alfredo Simon, who's been just terrible recently. Higher walk rate than strikeout rate over the past 30 days, giving up a lot of hard contact. So I love Salazar. I think you can consider him in your cash game. I like him a little bit more in tournaments, but there's not a lot of good cash game options, so I don't mind if you do that. Tyson Ross, probably my favorite pitcher when you factor in price there. $10,300, facing off against a team that's really struggling. The Dodgers offense just not getting it going right now. Ross, pitching in Petco, one of the best in all of baseball at keeping the ball on the ground, limiting hard contact, and keeping the ball in the ballpark. So for a lot of reasons, I love Tyson Ross tonight. He's facing off against Alex Wood, obviously, so a decent pitcher on the other side. No slam dunk here. In fact, Alex Wood a slight favorite in this one, but I really like Tyson Ross quite a bit tonight despite all that. Aside from that, your other options, you got Lance McCullers, biggest favorite on the night, $9,200, facing the worst road offense in baseball in the Minnesota Twins. Got to expect he's going to get some run support as well. Irvin Santana did pitch very well against this team in his last start, but at the same time, George Springer back. This game's at home. I expect Houston to put up some runs and give him some support. You can consider Alex Wood, like I mentioned, against San Diego. He's a guy that is a fine cash game pitcher, doesn't have really the upside I'm looking for in tournaments. You can look at Bartolo Colon coming off a great game, but he has been very inconsistent and struggles with left-handed bats. There's some good left-handed bats in this lineup for Miami. So guys like Christian Yelich, Derek Dietrich hitting the ball really well. I think he's a fine option, but I'm certainly not expecting anything near what he put up last time against the Phillies. Outside of that, Gio Gonzalez, very tempting here against an Atlanta team that's terrible against lefties, but Gio's been horrible recently. You look at his game logs for DraftKings, -8, 7, 9, and 11 in his last 4 starts. So while that price tag is tempting, he's still a GPP-only play for me. Atlanta doesn't strike out much, although they are bad against lefties, so not a guy I'm going out of my way to roster a lot. 2 guys around that price I do like. Derek Holland, coming off an incredible performance. 11 strikeouts and 9 shutout innings against Baltimore at Texas. Gotta love that. That was only a second start back from the DL. Now gets a sputtering Angels offense. It's been terrible against lefties recently, so you got to like that. Jared Weaver on the other side. Got to expect he'll get some run support there. And then Jesse Chavez. You don't love the matchup against the Seattle team that does hit right-handed pitching well, but it's at O.co, and we know that Chavez does have upside. Has struggled with the home runs. In fact, each of his last 7 starts, he's given up at least 1 home run, despite some of those games being at home. Did struggle big time against Seattle at Seattle, but I think he's a good tournament option. Single bullet type of guy that you throw in there because he does have some upside. And then if you're going to be stacking bats, the one cheap guy, he's the cheapest guy on the board. Not a good pitcher, not a bad pitcher, just the epitome of average. Brad Hand at $4,600 against the Mets. Mets are not very good against left-handed pitching, so I think if you're trying to stack a bunch of Coors bats, maybe get an Indian stack in there as well. That's the guy that I'll be going with, but I don't feel great about it, though. Catcher options, Travis d'Arnaud against that Brad Hand. He's probably my favorite non-third baseman for the Mets if I'm going to be targeting Hand. $5,300, he's pricey, but he's a guy who's been great recently. Buster Posey, of course, against Chad Bettis, the righty, in Coors Field. Posey's been a letdown the first couple games, but I'll be going back to the well, give him another shot here today. Jan Gomes at $3,400, a guy who is facing off against Simon, who I mentioned, been really struggling. Simon is better against righties than lefties, but Jan Gomes, he's a guy that has a ton of power. I'm going to be picking on Simon wherever I can. And catcher's not a particularly good position today, so I don't mind going that route. Derek Norris against the lefty and Wood, guy who's been up and down all season long, but at $3,000, I think he's probably your best cheap option. You can look at a guy like Asmani Grandal against Tyson Ross, but Grandal's been awful, and Ross has been good. So really just not a guy that I'm going on my way to target. If you need punt plays, Tyler Flowers, if he's in the lineup tonight, I like him quite a bit. Homered last night, $2,400 against Danny Duffy, who struggles against righties. That's the way I'll be going probably. First base options, Brandon Belt, your most expensive guy. Another Giants batter, as they all have been seemingly, let down at Coors Field, but he's got good BVP if you're a believer in that against Chad Bettis, and also he's got a ton of power against righties, so finally he gets a righty. I'm a big fan of his tonight. Miguel Cabrera in a tournament against Salazar you can play. He hasn't been very good recently either, but as we know, Salazar still has those home run issues. I would prefer, though, Jose Abreu at $4,700 against Danny Duffy. Or if you want to ride the hot hand despite a tough matchup, Ryan Zimmerman continues to mash the ball, $4,400. In a less than ideal matchup, though, against Shelby Miller, who's very tough on right-handers. Prince Fielder at $3,800 against Jared Weaver looks nice. Weaver, fly ball pitcher, just has not been good. Fielder probably more of a cash game play than a tournament play because he just hasn't shown a ton of upside, but I like him quite a bit tonight. Ben Paulson at $3,400, but more importantly, Justin Morneau at $3,600 since he was back in the lineup last night. Just went 1 for 4, but much better hitter, much better player. Definitely a guy that I'll be looking at as well. And then as far as your cheap guys go, there's not a whole lot that really stands out. I mean, you've got Mitch Moreland at $3,200 against Weaver is an okay swerve in your GPPs. I still probably won't be playing Victor Martinez. He's just been nothing short of terrible recently, so I'll be avoiding that. And I'm really not paying down here at first base. You could look at a guy like Kyle Parker at $2,100 if he's in the lineup, but I'll probably bat 7th or 8th, and I'd rather have him in the outfield. Second base options, easily Jason Kipnis, top play for me, $5,100. Mentioned that Alfredo Simon is awful against lefties. Jason Kipnis is a lefty, one of the better, more consistent lefty hitters in all of baseball, especially in the middle infield, so I like him quite a bit. Jose Altuve, you can consider against Irvin Santana as well at $4,600. Brian Dozier, another guy who has power, but other than that has not been doing much over the past month or so. Give him a look in your tournaments against Lance McCullers. Ben Zobrist, as he is most nights against the lefty, one of my favorite plays at second, $4,400 against Quintana. Quintana's a fine lefty, but not a guy that I'm shying away from with a guy like Zobrist, who from the right side of play has been mashing the ball this season. Robbie Cano against Chavez, $3,900 just seems too cheap for him. You can look at some other cheap guys down here. Justin Turner against Tyson Ross, if you're not playing Ross, I think is a fine play there. Kelby Tomlinson, once again, $3,600, hasn't done much. I mentioned none of these San Francisco bats really have, so I'm looking at him. But my cheap option is going to be Jed Jerko against Alex Wood. He's been mashing lefties this year. Homered in back-to-back games, $2,700. I think he's got some nice upside here. Third base options, Nolan Arenado, inexplicably the third most expensive batter at third base. I mean, he's easily your top play if you ask me. Homered now in 5 straight games. You got to get some Nolan Arenado in your lineups. I'm not saying he's an absolute must-play, but he's very close to it. So get yourself some Arenado. Outside of that, I love David Wright at $4,800 against Hand. He's my favorite Mets bat if I'm going to be picking on Hand. Sano, of course, you consider. It's not a great matchup against McCullers, but the guy's just been destroying the baseball. So $5,600, nice swerve off of the popular Arenado. Zimmerman, who I mentioned, will be third base eligible as well. Trevor Plouffe, I like at $3,800 in the tournament against McCullers. As far as cheap options go, not a lot that really stands out here either. Lonnie Chisenhall, my boy, $3,200. Got to like him as a lefty against Alfredo Simon. Outside of that, you can look at guys like David Freese, who does hit lefties very well, going against Derek Holland. Like I mentioned, Holland has been pitching well, but Freese at $3K just seems too cheap. Derek Dietrich, also at $2,900 against Cologne, is a fine option. And then right below him, a guy that we saw earlier in the season, had a nice hot start, then cooled off, went back to the minors for a couple months. Joey Gallo at $2,800 against fly ball pitcher Jared Weaver. Sign me up for that and some GPPs. Shortstop options, there are not many. Your top 4 guys are your clear-cut top 4 options. Correa against Irvin Santana, Jose Reyes and Brandon Crawford, both at Coors Field, and Francisco Lindor, the switch hitter, against Alfredo Simon, who's batting over 400 over the past month. So those are the guys I'm looking at. I'm going to find it really hard to swerve off of those guys for cheaper options. But if you had to, you could look at a guy like Eric Ibar for a cash game at $3,000. He's not a terrible option there. Marwin Gonzalez, if he's in, $2,800. And then all the way down at the bottom, there's really nothing. I was hoping to find someone cheap as like your super value play. But, I mean, if Daniel Descalso plays for some reason tonight, $2,000, he's okay as a cash game play, but he's not a guy that I really like at all. I mean, he has zero upside. You really just hope that he is cheap, comes in with some runners on, maybe gets an RBI, but he's just not a good play. Outfield options. Carlos Gonzalez still just $5,000. I'm not sure what this guy has to do to get a top-notch price tag, but he's the guy that you're going to be targeting, going to be the most popular play on the board once again, and rightfully so. Michael Brantley, most expensive healthy outfielder, $5,400, but you got to love him against Simon. Locane, Ben Zobrist, both guys outfield eligibility. Lefties against Quintana, got to like them. Cespedes is in play for me. Probably more of a single bullet type of guy. I know he's home run in 3 straight games, but he hasn't been great against lefties. Brad Hand does not allow a lot of home runs. Charlie Blackmon, of course, another Coors Field bat. And then as you're looking down a little bit, you get guys like Marlon Byrd who have really been struggling. $4,600. Now it's a righty. He blew his chances with lefties last couple days. Didn't really pan out. But one guy who I think is way too cheap finally returned yesterday after missing 2 months. George Springer, $4,300 against Irvin Santana. Love him. Upton and Kemp, if you want a little mini stack from San Diego. Both guys right around 4K. Great prices for them. I like Christian Yelich, and as a $3,900 outfielder against Cologne who struggles against lefties. I also like Ichiro at $2,300, nice punt play. And then one more Marlins bat, $3,300 Marcelo Zuna, I think is in a fine spot as well. As you're scrolling down looking for more cheap options, Shin-Soo Choo, another guy to pick on Jared Weaver with. I think he's in a fine spot. Also, you can look at some of these cheap San Francisco bats, but not very many of them actually have upside. So I'm looking for guys that actually have upside if I'm not paying up. I think paying up's the way to go in the outfield, though. Trace Thompson at $3,200 as a righty against the lefty Duffy. He's crushed lefty since he's come up, so you got to like him. Preston Tucker against Irvin Santana. Now that he's back up, if he's in the lineup, got to like his power upside as well. And then Juan Lagares leading off at $3,000 against Brad Hand. Just a fine cash game play for you there. And that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.